Today we are going to talk about beyond the metrics of delivery. We're looking at how we're going to measure and really prove the value of the PMO. I have lots of notes that I'm going to refer to in this to make sure that I cover all the content. So forgive me if my eyes aren't always on you. But hopefully we will get some really good chatting, network sharing, etc. on this. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. As you can see, I am Zoe O'Toole. I've been in project and change management, PMO, for just over 30 years. Clearly, I don't look anywhere near old enough. I am a self-confessed PMO geek. Love it. My husband has even been dragged to conferences in the past. My business, which is celebrating its 10th birthday, along with the PMO conference this year, is Tools Consulting. And my main reason to be in Tools Consulting is about enhancing PMOs, whether it's building them or helping them to improve what they already have. But those words there that are really important to me are about confidence and self-sufficiency. I often use the Nanny McPhee quote, if you need me, I'll be there. If you want me, then it's time to go. And I know a few of you on there have worked with me before, and you know that I like to make sure that people are there and able to run their organisations with some coaching. I am a hands-on consultant, as you can see. I've spoken at a few conferences now, which I'm very proud of, and I hope that you will enjoy today. I'm also an accredited trainer for PMO Learning, delivering the House of PMO Essentials courses. There are 4 courses. There are administrator, so PMO administrator, analyst, manager, and director. I specifically train the get my teeth back in, the analyst, the administrator, manager, and director roles. Outside of this lovely PMO world and my large menagerie, I also like to wild swim. So big up to anybody out there who likes to swim outside in the cold. You can see this picture was actually taken during the winter, hence the wetsuit. I'm not quite as brave as some of you wild swimmers out there, but this is something that really makes my heart sing, gets me outside and allows me to escape for a while. So there's a little bit about me.
The vibe I would maybe go, but I'm not.
Let's get into this then. Going to start with this quote. It's one of my faves. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. It's actually said by Mark Twain. So I don't think there is anything truer than this in the world of metrics. But the thing is, especially in PMO, what exactly is it we are looking to measure? So too often I find that PMO reporting is all actually about the project performance, about its budgets, its timelines. But today, we're not going to be looking at project performance. We're going to flip that lens. We're actually going to look at how well the PMO itself is going to deliver. So I really want you to think about that as we go through the session today. I'll be talking for 30-40 minutes. So it's about how well the PMO itself is actually delivering. Are we enabling those smarter decisions? Are we reducing complexity, making things easier, clearer, and better? Or are we just reporting projects that get read and then subsequently forgotten? What I'm going to be talking about today, we're going to be looking about finding those right measures, using those metrics that really matter, and most importantly, making sure that those metrics work for us. So we're going to look at the problem with traditional PMO. What makes a good PMO metric? We are going to get a little bit of interaction from you, hopefully. We're going to look at some of the PMO metrics that you might want to use in your organisations, and we're going to have a little just pit stop on how we might communicate effectively. Everybody with me? Brilliant. Okay, so moving on. I've just flipped the wrong page, forgive me. What you will not get here, my friends, is a class on how to be effective in, there we go, how to be effective in technology. Sorry, one just moment, please. Sorry, guys, one moment. There we go. Right, so as I've already said, we are looking at measuring the PMO's value. And what's really important is that we shouldn't be measuring that PMO by the performance necessarily of our single projects. So I want you to think about a recipe book here. When you get a good recipe book, I don't know what your preferences are, the Jamie Olivers, the Nigellas, the Ken ones. When you're looking at these, if you look at the recipe book, you might think that that means that will judge how good your dinner or your cake might turn up, which seems quite reasonable. But what you've got to think about is when people take that recipe book, what they might do is maybe wing it. Not that my husband does that ever, of course, but they might take that recipe book, flip it to the side, ignore the recipe, and then carry on, just like perhaps a project skipping governance. Who knew? Some ingredients might actually be missing, so they've got the menu, the recipe there, but they're not actually got all the ingredients they need to deliver it. Some chefs might burn it, might have got distracted, be doing something else, but they blame the instructions. So it's not their fault, it's the recipes book. Sometimes the dinner turns out great because and they haven't followed the recipe, and that's really good. But that luck factor sometimes can be a bit dangerous because that can lead to habits of not following that recipe book going forwards. So what does that recipe book do? It provides a clear plan. It helps to avoid disasters. It can save time and it can ensure consistency. So let's just put that into PMO words for us. Providing a clear plan. It can provide frameworks, processes and governance. Helping avoid disasters, making sure we haven't added too much salt to the recipe. It can save time. We can use those tried and tested methods to help us focus on delivering the project and not figuring out how we're going to do that. And it ensures that consistency so that we're not doing everything from scratch each time. The PMO is that recipe book, not the chef. It provides the structure and the guidance and best practices, but it can't stop people from ignoring the steps or from setting the kitchen on fire. So this is why we need to make sure that when we are looking at measuring the value of the PMO, we can't look at how well a project is performing. It will certainly give us indicators, but we need to be very careful about how we are presenting that and how people see that PMO and the value that it's giving. Here's another analogy for you. I've taught cake and cooking, so I thought I'd better throw a football one in there. So the football team wins the match 3-0. Who gets the credit? Well, of course, it's the players for scoring the goals. What role does the coach have in this? Why do we have the coach? I mean, it's hard to say how good the coach is if we do it just based on the goals. We don't know necessarily what difference that coach has made. But if we measure only the goals that are scored, we're not understanding the benefit of tactical planning, of the development of those goal scoring players or anybody else, of course, in the team. We're not considering the strategy of that game. And we're not thinking about resilience and making sure that we can keep on top of stuff and face blockers as they come along. So as well as looking at our PMO as the recipe book, we can also consider the PMO as the coach. It enables the success. It doesn't directly score the goals, but it sets up the environment in which those goals can be scored. Are you all with me? Oh. For those Monty Python people amongst us, what has the PMO ever done for us? So I want you to think about this. This is a really powerful statement, and something that I really want you to reflect on. I've been in organisations and with people here on the call where the PMO has gone in and out of fashion over the years. So we've had the PMO introduced, we've had it taken away. Is everyone on mute? Thank you. Get back in. Yes, so we've had the PMO going in and out. Why are organisations asking the question about whether we should have PMO or not and what that value is? So I really need you to think about, how do we make sure that our stakeholders aren't asking that question, that we're providing that information to them already? And just like those Romans in Life of Brian, Monty Python, as I said, the PMO has done quite a lot. It's not just about tracking work. If your stakeholder answers the question with what has the PMO ever done for us, if they answer that with, we've done some admin, we've made sure that the risks log is up to date, then are we actually making sure that those stakeholders understand what we are doing for them? And it's our job to make sure they realise that value. A great PMO enables strategic decision making. It enables efficiency, and it enables business success. So let's just have a little look at what are some of the schools of thought are saying about how does a PMO demonstrate value. So you can see here I've referenced House of PMO, P3O, P3G, which is governance, and PMI. So I just want to walk through these a little bit. It's a little bit of theory for you in true training style. So House of PMO, what have they got to say? Well, of course, they have the competency framework and essentials, and they define PMO success beyond delivery. They focus on governance, capability, and decision support. They absolutely push the message that PMO is an enabler. It's not an admin function. Metrics should measure PMO effectiveness, they say, in decision making, improving maturity, and enabling project success. What does P3G have to say? They say that good governance drives impact, that governance should be proportionate, transparent, and decision driven. They say that metrics should measure not just the compliance, but also the effectiveness of the governance. How should they apply it? Well, the PMO should show its impact in the escalation of its risks, in ensuring alignment and streamlining the making of decisions. Their key messages is around the fact that metrics should highlight how governance improvements lead to better risk management, to clearer decision-making pathways, and to reduce delays in execution. So we can't stop some of these things from happening, but we can create the environment which optimizes the chances of us getting these things done in a good way. P3O. Portfolio, Programme and Project Offices. I'm sure a number of you have been through the course and used the learnings from that. They very much see the PMO as a value centre, not as a cost centre. They suggest that the PMO needs to be seen as a business critical function. It's not just an admin overhead. They say that strong PMOs optimise resources, they de-risk those projects, and they provide strategic insight. How might they apply it? They suggest that if we look at metrics on resource efficiencies, on benefits tracking, and also risk mitigation, this is how you can demonstrate the value. So in summary, the PMO metrics, say P3O, that should demonstrate things are around how resource optimization and strategic alignment reduces waste, improves efficiency, and enhances organisational agility. They say that, as I said, the PMO is a business critical function. It is not an admin overhead. And finally, we've got the PMI here. So the PMI talks about PMO maturity and impact. It says that we are looking at the fact that effective PMOs will contribute to organisational maturity. They say that the best PMOs increase delivery success rates, improve governance, and drive strategic outcomes. And how best to apply it? They say metrics should link to PMO maturity, to better decision making, reduced failure rates, and business impacts. So I've given you a little bit of theory there, but you can see that there are some real common themes across all of those different ways. But we can see things like improved decision making, about enablement, about improving efficiency, and as I said, one of my favourite words for the PMO is providing confidence. Here's a question for you, and I think it's something that you should take away and maybe address outside of here. And that question is, if your PMO vanished tomorrow, what would the organisation lose? And this gives you a really good starting position for how you can determine what value your PMO adds, and therefore how can you demonstrate that through the metrics that you use. If the answer to this question is we'd have fewer reports, then the PMO is probably not demonstrating its full potential. Something I talk about quite a lot on the director's course especially is around that business case. So as PMOs, we are always asking our projects to make sure they have a business case in place, because that gives us our justification for why that project should go ahead. Why should we not do that for the PMO? If we have a business case for the PMO, it makes it really easy to be able to demonstrate why we're here, what the benefit is, what the return of that investment is. So I've done for you here a little list of things that you consider if you were building a business case for the PMO. So I suggest that you might want to look at aligning metrics with business priorities. So look at what's important to the business and think about how the PMO can support that and have your metrics aligned to that. What does the C-suite really care about? So think about how we might do that. If decision making is seen as something that doesn't happen in a really good way, this might be a great way to put in a metric where you can show that the PMO governance, the way they're pulling together information so that those informed decisions can be made, will be a value. Use storytelling. I love storytelling. It's something I use quite a lot in my training. What this is about is make sure those metrics mean something. It's all very well showing some information, turn it into something that has value to it. I've used the example several times in the training I do. One of the organisations I worked with very proudly produced a report to give to the C-suite each month based on all the stuff that the information that the PMO could pull together. This pack, I swear you're not, I might be slightly out on the numbers, was something like 143 pages of Excel sheets every month. How many C-suite people would even open a file that big? So what we had to do, what we were asked to do, is have a look at that document and say, what's that telling us? What's the information in there? And that's a really important thing for us to remember when we're looking at providing metrics. Make sure they are meaningful, that they tell a story. That's what I look for when I'm looking at project reports, for example. I'm seeing, can I get, from looking at the information in there, a good view on what's happening and where I need to focus my attention.
Zoe,
Yeah, hiya.
sorry, I'm not clear. Are you saying that a 200-page Excel report isn't appropriate?
I think I am.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So ask why, please.
Why, Zoe?
Make it meaningful, keep it short and simple, of course. And you remember that report, don't you? Quantifying the value of the PMO. It's a difficult one when you're looking at numbers, but I think it is important to be able to express in really simple ways how you can demonstrate what that value is. So have some metrics in there that you can actually refer to that are easy and quick to explain. Make sure that you are not just looking at what the PMO is doing, but what the business impact is, what you're actually getting from that work that the PMO is doing. Engage your stakeholders early. Make sure they understand what it is you're doing. More importantly, ask them what they want. Working with clients, I usually start with not what's in the book that says these are the things the PMO must do. I start with asking, sorry, I don't know if you can hear, that's my cat fighting. One moment. Apologies, that was my door, not the cat. Yes, so make sure that you understand what it is that your stakeholders want. What are their pain points? So it's a really good place to start when I go in and visit clients, is to understand what their problems are, and then I can relate back to how a PMO service might do that. And finally, and I guess picking up from our storytelling point, is creating a compelling narrative. So make sure it's something that does interest them, that they are going to get the benefit and they're going to get and see and acknowledge the benefit they're going to get. Make sure you're using words and language that mean something to them, that don't sound like posh PMO words.
Good morning.
Hello?
Hey, beautiful.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We'll move on. Right, so here we go. I need you to do some shouting out now. I thought I've given you loads of theory there, so I thought we'd have a go at looking at some metrics and seeing what you think is important from them. So here we go. Here is our first one. Is this metric useful or useless?
Useless.
All good. We've got some useless there. Yes. Anyone think it's useful? Nice. Okay, yeah. So this is a useless report. And why is that? The more reports you produce does not mean you are adding more value. The best it's doing is saying you're spending lots of time compiling the reports. And is that meaningful? Does that feel like your stakeholders are getting something from them? What a better metric might be when we're looking at reports is the percentage of reports that drive action. So you might only send out 3 reports, but if they are used directly to create decisions, then you are providing something that is meaningful and has value. Let's look at the next one. Percentage of key decisions informed by PMO data.
Useful.
Useful.
Lovely. Anyone want to give a reason why?
It means the data is informative and is supporting decisions rather than blocking decisions.
Perfect answer. Thank you very much. It's proving whether the PMO is influencing decision making rather than just tracking those project updates.
Yeah.
If leaders are making key decisions based on PMO insights, it shows a real impact on governance and strategy. Correct.
Also demonstrates the value add that the PMO can bring
Brilliant. Thank you
in
for
terms
that.
of insights.
Yeah, brilliant. No,
Carol's asked an important question there, Zoe, in the chat. How would you measure it?
oh, we're going to go on to that. If you can hold on that thought, please. But thank you for raising that one, Jenny. Hold that thought. Budget adherence of projects.
Useful.
Any other thoughts on this?
I would say it's useful in measuring portfolio health, but not necessarily PMO effectiveness.
Cool. Good for you. Any other thoughts?
Depends what actions it drives.
I think you're absolutely right there. It depends on what it is you are doing. It's a bit of a trick question. We always like to do those, don't we? So budget adherence really depends on a few things we need to think about here. It could show us how the project is being managed rather than the PMO. A PMO could stay on budget even though the PMO hasn't put in good structure, or the project could go outside of the budget even though the PMO has the controls in place. So what might be a better metric is PMO influence on financial forecasting accuracy. So how much variance is reduced as a result of PMO driven oversight. So what we could say, this is something I did not see the one, but let me just go on to this as I'm on a roll. If we are showing that we have poor, let's say, forecast to actual, but then we put in an intervention of doing monthly reviews with the project managers, of doing some coaching sessions and such like, if we see that the variance is improving, the delta between the actuals and the forecast, then we've got a nice metric that we can demonstrate that on. Next one.
That's
I
useful.
would say useful.
Okay, good. So why might this be useful? Well, if the PMO trusts the support and they find the support valuable, they are far more likely to engage and follow our governance. So if people feel that they are seeing, let's say, PMO support as opposed to PMO police, you've got a far better chance of improving your overall governance in there. We do need to be a bit cautious though. We don't want this to become a vanity metric. We don't want this to be a survey that we give out that is focused on saying how great the PMO is. So we need to be really real on how we are putting this in, asking these questions, getting this metric out there. People might say they like the PMO just so they don't get chased for not doing their report. So you need to think about it. However, it's something that is an important metric that we need to understand how well people are doing for us. We just need to think about how we do that. So have a think about how you might effectively get that feedback. Number 5.
Useless.
Useless. Anyone else?
Useless as well.
Yeah, just because we have lots of meetings, that doesn't actually prove anything. If anything, it might affect our stakeholder satisfaction point. We don't need to attend all the project meetings, nor do we need to have lots of project meetings. What might be a better metric is looking at the meetings that PMO are attending, where we have an active role in helping to drive decision making happening. So it's about measuring the real contribution as opposed to just attending it. Definitely clients I'm working with at the moment, we've got a little bit of a challenge that we're trying to fix, where we've got more people attending the project meetings than even the size of the project team. People are interested in adding their opinions, but that doesn't actually help us drive things forward. So when we look at ourselves as the PMO, we need to make sure if we're attending meetings, it's about what value are we giving the attendees for that. And finally,
I would say this in itself is useless. It's more the, as with one of the previous ones, it's the actions that then come out of it, or the depth of the review. So have the risks all got mitigating controls and things in place, rather than just that they've been looked at?
I think that's a really great answer. I don't think anyone would dispute that. So just because we've had a look at loads of risks doesn't actually mean we've done anything apart from do a tally. So there's no perceived value in that. A better metric might be a percentage of risks escalated or mitigated due to PMO challenge. Now, the reason why I've said due to PMO challenge is it's not our job as PMO to mitigate the risks, but what we might do by going in and challenging and probing and helping people to think about the risks that they're doing, we might help drive those risks being managed in a better way that takes us forward. So what we are looking at is how our oversight might enable better risk management. Oh, as an all. It was just a general oh, I'm guessing. Okay. So what I'm going to have a look at now is the types of metrics or the groups, the themes that I would probably take a look at when you're considering your PMO metrics. So I'm starting with portfolio health and decision enablement. So what you might think about here is how often does the PMO provide the right data at the right time for governance boards? A way you might do that is by saying, measuring the metric of you get your steer co-packs out to the governance board in the time that you said you would, with plenty of time for people to have a look at that. So how well are we supporting decision making? We're making sure that we're meeting our SLAs of getting the pack sent out on time. That might feel like a small thing, but a lot, especially with these clients, but in previous ones, you get the pushback. How can I make a decision if you sent out the pack late? Okay, and then that becomes a PMO problem. Thinking about the data confidence levels, how do we add that value? We need to make sure that our stakeholders feel confident that the information that we are providing them is accurate and timely. So you might think about the percentage of senior leaders that rate the reporting that we send out as useful and actionable. So they want to read the report because they know there is data in there that they can believe in and act on. And then finally, timed up really with that first one, the timeliness of the decision support, the ability to make decisions in a quicker time because the PMO has helped to speed up maybe funding or prioritisation decisions. Another area you might look at is process efficiency, standardisation. So what you might look at here is this time saved on reporting. So you may have all of your projects all creating a different style of report because that's what their people like. If you can standardise and have maybe an automated process, then that means that people aren't spending time creating their templates. And it's not just about the creation of the template, it's also about the reading of the template for me, the reading of the report. I often say if you can keep a standard report or a steer co-pack, you use the same format every time, then when the reader is looking at that, they are focusing on the content and not figuring out where they need to find the information inside. You might look at the reduction in administrative burden. How has the PMO helped to streamline governance process? And finally, you might look at how long it takes for approvals to be taken. So that's often a projects you'll see. I was involved with one of the banks I work with. It took them, I'm trying to remember, let's say 3 weeks to turn around a customer question. They needed to take that down to an SLA of, let's say, 5 days. So that's a really nice metric to demonstrate we can apply that through to governance processes. So how long has the time taken to get approvals done, to get risks escalated, to get those financial checks done? One of the ways that I did that with one of my clients was to say on risk reporting, I had an open hours, shall we call it, every Friday, where we would say, if you have a risk, if you put it in your risk log, we will make sure that's put in front of a board of people who can make those decisions for you, and we will get the answer out to you. What that meant was the people who were being asked decisions knew that they had just one spot in the week where they could focus on it and not be pestered by those nasty, pesky project managers. But also the project managers knew there was a place where they could get that information from. That was adding value. In capability building and maturity. So how many teams are actually using the PMO frameworks and advisory services? Have a look at what services you've got and how well they're being used. And if you find it's the go-to place, then I suspect you're adding good value. Have a look at how we can our project manager capability is improving because of the time that we are taking as a PMO to support those people. So what you might use as a metric there is maturity assessments. So you have a maturity baseline, you're inputting your support, your coaching, all those things you want to do. And then you look at how their capability improves as a subsequent survey. And have a look at training knowledge management. How might you do this? Well, here's a good measure. How many of you have set up meetings or lunchtime meetings to say, if you come to this meeting, we will show you how to do the finance process this month. If people aren't coming or aren't putting the time into it, they don't see value in it. So think about the percentage rates, the number of individuals that feel that coming to one of your training sessions, your mentoring sessions are actually adding value. Looking at risk and issue resolution effectiveness. It's a bit of a long phrase. I couldn't think of something that made it shorter. The reason that I've written it like this is because it is not our job, as I said earlier, to resolve risks, unless, of course, we are accountable or responsible for them. But what we do have a responsibility in is making sure that we have a process that allows risk and issue management for resolution to be done in the most effective way. So I gave you an example a few moments ago. So it's looking at how well can we help that process of getting timely decisions made before they turn into issues. We might want to look at dependency management. So are we doing a good job on exposing, or it's a strong word, making sure that people can see dependencies? Projects are very good at managing within themselves, but not so good at making sure they're considering the impacts on other projects. So what can we do? That's a real value add. What can we do to help that visibility come out there? Finance and resource optimization. What can we do to help improve forecasting? And we talked about this earlier once again on looking at the difference between forecast and actual spend. For me, I have to tell you, and those that know me will know this, finance is not my favourite thing. However, it's a really great way to demonstrate the value of the PMO. It's a really nice way to show what benefit you add. And I've done that consistently across organisations. You can look at the allocation effectiveness of resourcing. So this is not the quality of those resources. It's about how quickly we are fulfilling those resource requests. I've been in organisations where we've had weekly meetings to actually look at the demand against the supply that we've got. And if we facilitate those meetings effectively and people are feeling like they're getting their answers, they will see the value of the PMO. And then finally, of course, cost savings. Has the PMO helped to identify areas where efficiencies can be improved? So often, well, not often, I've been involved with organisations which are looking at, they want to reduce the number of PMO they've got, the PMO people. For me, it's not about that, it's about the amount of value you get from them. So if you can look at automation systems that take away, and these can be spreadsheets as well as bought things, if you can look at ways that you can improve the inefficiencies of admin tasks and focus your energies into those real value-adding tasks, then you are going to demonstrate that value that you can give and look at cost savings that you can make. So I've given you a group of different types of projects, metrics that we can look at there. I'm just moving on to how we present this information. So this is my pretty but pointless chart. Now, you've probably seen this before. You probably have done these before. This is showing us how well the reports have been submitted on time. It's neat, it's technically accurate, there's the data on there, and it's showing the submission rates by projects. So that's good, but let's just have a think on this. What's this actually telling us? What would you do if you saw this? Does anybody actually care?
No.
Is it useful? Yeah. Is this useful? So yeah, anyone got any thoughts on that?
If it was in a pack, you'd probably just skip through it. So
Yeah.
if you're in a portfolio reporting pack, you'd skip the slide. It's not telling me anything really meaningful.
Yeah, totally. It looks good, but it's pointless, pretty pointless. That's a nice phrase you can use. And I've seen this quite a lot, and I've done it myself. Sometimes you look at a page and it's full of data or full of those spreadsheets, and you say, oh, that's really hard to look at, so I'll just convert it into a nice pie chart because it looks much more visually attractive. But it's not giving us any more value because it's not telling us anything. So here's a take two. Now, this is not pretty, but neither is it pointless. So what we can see here is that we have a project here that is not giving the reports in on time. We can see that it's affecting, we can see the impact of it, and we can also see that there is an action to go and pick that up and do something with it. So we're showing a trend, we're pointing to an action, which is go and have a chat with Project D. You can probably come up with much nicer examples, but I've deliberately done this still as fairly plain because I want you to know you do not need to be Picasso or Da Vinci to create beautiful looking metrics. But what you do need to consider is providing information that has impact, that tells the story, that gives the information straight to the person who's reading it. So when you're presenting that data, presenting those metrics, you need to think about what's the issue? The so what? Why does it matter? And what are we going to do about it? And another thing that I will often add is there something that we need the reader to do? Any thoughts on that? Can we have some thumbs up if you can see this would add better value to the reader?
It certainly draws the reader's attention to something they need to be aware of. So it's better than the previous one.
Yeah. And I did start to, I can't lie, I did start to write a really sexy one, a really sexy presentation of the data, but then I stopped because you also have to balance getting the information across in an impactful way, but in a timely way, as opposed to making it look so good, but the time you've taken to done it, to create it, you're actually losing time, or the effort that you've put into it is not worth the impact or the value that's taken from it. So you don't need to be an artist, but you do need to think about how that's being read and received. I've gone through lots of different things in this presentation. I'm just coming now to just summarise. We've talked about why we want metrics that are for the PMO. We have considered why judging how a project performs doesn't necessarily tell us how well that PMO is performing. We've had to think about what's good metric and what's not good metric, are useless and useful. We've had a look at the types of metrics that you might want to consider as a PMO, and I hope from that question earlier we've got some examples of how you might come up with the way that you demonstrate that metric. And the point that the question in there I think is a really good one, and that is it's very easy to ask ChatGPT to come up with a bunch of metrics, not that I haven't tried it, come up with a bunch of metrics, but if they are not actionable, if you can't do something with them and create them without loads of energy, then are they once again the right metrics to use? So you need to think about what you're investing in it to get your return. We've looked at the business case of the PMO. How do you justify your PMO? Well, why don't you go back to what we ask our projects consistently to do, and that's to create your own business case. And with that business case, what you also get from that is your terms of reference, if you like, for what you want to focus on in your PMO. It gives you a really nice framework of where you want to focus your work and your activity. So here are three tips. There are three little tips that I've left for you just to as my parting gift. And that is PMO metrics should inform decisions. So they shouldn't just be about tracking activity. We need to think about those so whats. Weak metrics will measure outputs. How useful is that? Strong metrics will measure outcomes. What are you actually getting from it? Make sure that your metrics are practical and measurable. Please, please make sure that you are not having to do all sorts of weird yoga positions in order to be able to provide the information. So make sure they are practical, make sure they are measurable, and make sure that they mean something. So we've covered that so what, sorry. And then finally, make sure that you tie your PMO efforts to the business impact. You might be a really valuable PMO, but if it's not answering the big ticket items that are affecting the business at that time, they won't see the benefit. There will be, why do we need you? That's really good that you can do on that, but how does that help us meet this business priority that we have? So I'm ending with a little quote for you. Thomas Edison, good fortune is what happens when opportunity meets with planning. And there you are. There's my presentation. I hope you found that useful. I'm going to stop sharing with luck. There we go. And see if you have any questions. Ian.
Hey, Zoe, thank you for the presentation. Really good. Thanks very much. It's certainly sort of generated a lot of thoughts in my head. One that I get asked as head of PMO for a software sales company is, tell me how this is helping us to achieve increased gross revenue retention or better profitability, those sorts of business outcomes that the rest of the organization is judged by. Any thoughts on how you would go about that?
So, tough question. Usually people say good question, don't they? I'm going to say tough question, but the way I might look at that is if you go back to the director's course, we talked about looking at the business priorities at the top and then breaking that down to what are their priorities. Therefore, that gives us what our vision is. That takes us down to our objectives. So we know that the business wants to, I've missed the start of that, but wants to make sure that we are achieving our revenues. So then we can look at what objectives are we going to do within the PMO that will allow that. And from that, we can take that down into these are the actions we're going to do. How are we going to measure against those? So you have a pyramid effect going down. So I would do a bit of a brown paper exercise, objectives of the business at the top, come down to how might we do that, and then break it down into the different levels, and that will give you your metrics at the bottom. And we can go through then again outside of this if you like, if you want me to talk that through a bit more.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think the way I approach it, and I'll just be very brief, sorry, is these are the outcomes of the business.
Yeah.
These are like the enabling things that the PMO can do to help that.
Mhm.
And that's how we'll measure them. And these are the tasks we'll take to deliver those enablers, so to speak. So I think it's similar to what you're saying, but it's something that I think, quote unquote, business, more commercially minded salespeople really struggle with. And they just see the PMO as an overhead, really.
Yeah, Ian,
Yes.
you might also add to the enabler the assurance bit. So first you help them to get to the starting line, but then also you are there for the senior management, making sure it's on track,
Yeah, okay.
right? So that's the second angle you can possibly use for this.
All right. Thanks, Olga. Cheers.
Sharing, Holger, thank you, and hi.
Hello,
Anyone
sorry.
else? Anyone else got anything that they'd like to ask or share? Did I see? Oh, I didn't see a thumbs up. Anyone like to share anything else, please?
There was one from earlier, Zoe, that I'll just circle back to from the chat. It said, could you give an example of how we can get an effective feedback on stakeholder satisfaction without it being survey-like?
Oh, okay. So there are lots of different ways to do this. You can do like your one-to-ones where you're having a regular meeting and just ask them. Doing temperature gauges is quite nice. So rather than doing a survey with a bunch of questions, is you can do like the happy face, the sad face, and the not sure face, and just have people punch on the button to say what they like. And you could also have that as a standard feature if you're lucky enough to have some kind of SharePoint or access point, is to have those buttons. So how was this today? Click on the button, maybe adding that to the SharePoint. So that will give you some quite valuable stuff, because someone is frustrated by the way that they've had to do a process. They will get that and it will attach it directly to that point. So that's a way. Surveys are interesting, aren't they? They are quite difficult to build, making sure they're objective and getting them back. They absolutely have a place, but hopefully that's another way of kind of on the spot stuff. And ask people. It's surprising how many people don't.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I hope you found this useful. I say I've walked through lots of different theory and ideas in there, but I wanted to give you as much as I could in the investment of your time today. Don't forget, PMO Learning has set up this webinar. They provide lots of courses, not just the essentials courses, which of course are fab, because I train those, as well as some other guys. And one of the reasons I like working with PMO Learning is they actually have working PMO practitioners doing the courses. So you get that practical element, you get the stories that go with it. It's not just reciting out of a book. They also do consultancy, one-to-one coaching and mentoring. Thank you ever so much. Please get in contact if you'd like to ask anything else. And I wish you a lovely Friday afternoon and weekend.